The time is 7:08 p.m. I announced that a quorum is present and call to order this City Council regular meeting. We'll start off with the invocation and then the Pledge of Allegiance. Everyone, please stand.
Dear Heavenly Father, we come before you today with humble hearts, open minds, with a commitment to do what is best for this community. Father, may there be no hidden agendas. May there be no ill will towards anyone. Let us conduct the business of today with peace, love, and harmony. In Jesus' name, amen.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. May be seated. All right, we'll start off with public comments. And our first speakers, you all will have 3 minutes each. And so I'll do all of those first, and then for one speaker that's I'll call you a blast for the public hearing area. So we're going to start off first with Mr. Samaripa. Come on up, sir.
Good evening, Mayor Harvey, Chris, good to see you. City Council, Scott, City Manager, good to see y'all. My purpose of being here is ask for your assistance in hopefully resolving a problem before it actually becomes a big problem. I did provide y'all with a well, I didn't have a copy for each of y'all. Sorry about that. Printer ran out of ink, but on the first page, I live right north of West Wheeler Street. And what happens is that when it rains, on the first page, you'll see that the rainwater is supposed to flow to the west. When it flows to the west, it hits the new development, the big, I guess it's apartments or something that's going on. But it hits that instead of going into the wooded area that it used to be there, it hits that new development and it pretty much stops. I did talk to Glenn Souls, and he came out, and the third picture shows that he did come out and took a look at it. But the third picture also shows that that drain is getting really filled up with water, with rainwater as it rains, and it only rained for about two inches that day. So, here in Mena, we've had occasion for it to rain quite a bit more at one time. So on the fourth picture, you'll see that after it fills up, it finally goes to the south of it. And when I talked to the superintendent, Mr. Navarez, who was in charge of that project, he said that he was going to cut more to the south, more of the landscape to the south and also to the north. And that sort of stumped me because usually the flow of the water goes from the North Mainer down to South Mainer, and then it's distributed. So
you have about 30 seconds. You have about 30 seconds.
Oh, okay. But on the fifth picture, you'll see that there's nothing done. Nothing has been done. The sixth is the same thing, and then in West Browning, they're doing construction there. So where is that rainwater going to go? For me, it's backing up, and like I told him, we need that rainwater to get out as soon as possible. But he hasn't really fulfilled the thing that I wanted him to do.
Thank you,
Is
sir.
that good?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good to see you. All right. Next, we have Mr. Juan Hernandez. Yeah, 3 minutes, sir.
Hello, Maynard City Council. My name is Juan Hernandez. I am a student at Maynard New Tech High School. I am one of the founding members of the Trashmen. I am one of the members of the Trashmen at the school who helps out every week picking up trash for the community of Maynard ISD. And last week, I was helping Will Barger Creek, helping around picking up trash in front of the park, which me and my friends are excited to explore the nature that has to offer for us. And we thank you all for the support that you guys will be giving us for the establishing of the park.
Oh, well, thank you.
That is. Sorry, I'm nervous. This is my first time being.
Oh, you did fine. You look nice.
Sorry. Thank you.
Okay. Next, we have Miss Ann.
Hi.
And you have
Good
3
to see you
minutes.
again. My name's Ann Brokenbrough, and I live on a ranch out just east of Austin, and I'm one of the members of the Will Barger Creek Conservation Alliance, and I just wanted to tell you guys about our big trash cleanup. We had a community cleanup out on Littig Road in front of what is going to be the new park, the Travis County Park. We cleaned up we had 28 volunteers from Austin and Manor, from the Manor Early College High School, and Maynard New Tech, and all sorts of young people at all ages. And we picked up over 100 bags of trash. Everyone, in 2 hours, everyone worked so hard, 100 big bags of trash. And everyone was really excited about, we cleaned up 1.5 miles in front of the new Travis County Park. And just being out there we took everyone to the back fence where you can look up and see this big valley, and then it goes up to a big ridge, and it's just magical out there. And so we're gonna extend invitations to all of you sometime this spring when the wildflowers are blooming to come out there. So check your inboxes. We're gonna invite you all out there when it gets pretty, and we can't wait to show it to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye.
All right. Next, we have, let's see, Mr. Hessel. Oh, thanks. How you pronounce your first name?
Good evening. My name is Torvald Hessel. Let me start by thanking you for volunteering your time for our community. It's greatly appreciated. I want you to know that it is appreciated. I'm speaking here today in regard to the proposed water treatment plant. My wife and I own property on Hibbs Lane and are therefore paying attention to these plans, and especially for its proposed location. We understand growth is inevitable, and my wife and I and our neighbors agree that this plant will be needed. That's not the issue, but the proposed location is of concern. You may know of the Austin Rifle Club of Littig Road. What you may not know is that when things flood, that rifle club is closed. It literally is underwater. It's not even closely accessible. At the same time, when the rifle club is closed, Jones Road is closed because of flooding. Bidding School Road is closed because of flooding. And the only way to get out to our property is going all the way around. Another thing that you may not know is that Hibbs Lane used to be connected close towards the Austin Rifle Club. That bridge washed out due to the same flooding decades ago. Um, if you read the wastewater master plan, it states that this treatment plant is proposed to be located near the confluence of Cottonwood Creek, Wilbarger Creek, and Willow Creek. And it sounds almost like it's a great idea, therefore, to put it there. It's a horrible location. The flooding is truly extreme. If you've never witnessed it, you know what happens here in Manor when we have a major flooding. That's just one creek. This is 3 creeks coming together right at the location where this is proposed. It will increase flooding because of that. And just the mitigation, it's going to be so horrifically expensive to build something there, and it won't work. Water will win. And therefore we ask this board to reconsider the location for a more suitable site. I know there will be some other speakers that propose to sell the tract to Travis County for additional parkland, to just like what Ann was talking about, to increase that size. I think it sounds like a perfect solution for the community. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, sir. Next, we have Mr. Ryan Fleming. Mr. Ryan Fleming. Sorry.
Good morning. Good evening. I'd like to also speak about the proposed site for the new water treatment plant. And our property is very close to the end of Hibbs Lane, and it's a low-key residential area. It's quiet, and we value that. That's why we have it. And as has been mentioned, it's located in a highly flood-prone area where people have died. And it seems like every year or two, for years, as long as I can remember, there are expensive rescues of people that are on these roads in this flooding. So it's going to create consistent problems with access to any kind of water treatment plant that's down there. And any kind of mitigation is going to be expensive. And it may not even be successful, quite likely not. The flooding is a natural part of our environment and the creeks that we have, and we need to be practical and work with it rather than throwing a whole lot of money that we don't really have to try to fight it. We're hoping that the city will decide to sell the property to Travis County, and it makes sense from a lot of different angles because it will allow Manor to find a less difficult, more appropriate site that's closer to some of the developments. Managing the land to work with the flooding will avoid sabotaging downstream communities because typically when they try to control flooding in one place, this simple way, which never works, is to channel it, and they just keep channeling it downstream, and it just keeps making the flooding worse. And if you're downstream of somebody that does that, then you get it, and it just keeps going. If we keep those flood waters here and manage the land appropriately, it'll recharge our own water table, and it'll provide us with the clean drinking water and keep our creeks flowing. And the large park and the nature trail that Travis County is assembling with all these conserved properties around it is something that the city desperately needs. We need a wonderful big park with a nature trail, and Manor wouldn't have to pay for it because Travis County is the one that's putting all of this together. Everyone will benefit from this park and this nature trail, and it'll also help protect a valuable wildlife corridor and habitat along the creek, which is really critical. Placing a 24-hour operational facility with its noise and its light pollution in the middle of parkland and nature trail will greatly disrupt the quality of life for anybody that's living up there in this quiet neighborhood, and diminish the potential benefits of the park, including protecting our drinking water and the native wildlife, which are suffering from severe habitat. Is that me?
10 more seconds.
Okay. Anyway, please don't waste a valuable opportunity to protect land while simultaneously saving the city a great deal of money and headaches by building on an unsuitable site. With all due respect, this would not be a good choice. Thank you.
Thank you. Looks like Marilyn Kalinsky.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I'm here. I own some land east of Manor and Wilbarger Creek, and a lot of its tributaries go through there. When I first got the land, the bank on the near side was just level. Then in 2012, it was about the same. In 2021, you had a slope of about a foot, but now on that same side, it's a 46-inch drop. That is all due to erosion since 2021. I believe that that is because of the development that is occurring in this area, with land having concrete, asphalt, and everything put on it. If you look at the floodplain maps and you look at like the area that is next to 290 with Palmer, it shows that all of that land in there is AE, which is a flood prone area. It has been filled up with fill, probably 6, 7, 8 feet. All of that used to hold water, and the same thing on the opposite side next to the Chevron and behind AutoZone. That used to all hold a lot of water, but now it's all been built up and is planned, I know, for development. There needs to be more retention ponds, more attention paid, because it doesn't take much rain at all for lots of water to come down that creek. And I mean, it gets out of its bank. It brings a lot of trash and it erodes. It used to be just a wet weather creek when I got the land. It runs all the time now, and it doesn't take very much water, maybe 2 inches, 3 inches, and it is a roaring river. So I'm here to request that Manor, when you look at permitting, that you go on the excessive side of trying to control water runoff, because it is a real problem here. In addition, like this last weekend, my creek is full of algae. It shouldn't be there. When it's in good condition, there's nothing growing in it. And I believe this is due to faulty sewage and some leaks. And it is imperative, as more and more people come here and more use of these facilities occurs, that we've got to have good standards. We've got to make sure there's not spills, and we've got to make sure there's not little things here and there and put them all together, because especially if you put a sewage plant where there's flooding, that's going to be a real issue. So I just request that attention be made to water runoff, because it is severe, and also to make sure that the sewer plants, we know there's going to be more problem, that they're examined and made to work more perfectly. Thank you.
Thank you. And next, Mr. John Beal. And you may begin, sir.
Ready?
Mm-hmm.
About a month ago, we discovered that there are 11 current permitted wastewater treatment plants on Wilbarger Creek. In addition, there are 8 pending applications for more wastewater treatment to be placed in Wilbarger Creek. Wilbarger Creek goes dry just north of Shadow Glen at Gregg Lane. Cottonwood Creek goes dry about 100 yards north of Highway 290. There's water under Highway 290, thanks to the Beaver Dam that dams up the treated wastewater discharge out of Maynard's Cottonwood Creek wastewater treatment plant. This is a good thing. Creates a wet pond situation for that discharge. So we are astounded, and we want to pay some attention to this creek, which is being overloaded, and we are asking for your help. We need a regional wastewater treatment plant. All these little plants have lots of problems frequently. So as you consider solving this problem, another difficult, complex problem facing the city of Manor, we ask you to take this into consideration. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir. Okay. Now we have Jen Henderson, and you have 5 minutes.
Good evening, Mayor and Council and staff. I'm here really for the public hearing, for item 1 for the public hearing, so I can
Okay.
wait if
No,
you'd
we can
like.
bring it back then.
Okay,
Yeah.
perfect.
Okay. All right. Moving on, this concludes the public comments. We'll move right into the public hearing. Number 1, conduct a public hearing on a rezoning application for one lot on 4.879 acres, more or less, being located at 16023 East 290 Manor, Texas, from GO General Office to C3 Heavy Commercial. And would you like to come on now? All right.
I
We
wasn't
have
expecting to
5
be up
minutes.
so much faster. Well, I guess I could have stood here. I'm Jen Henderson. I'm the owner and CEO of Henderson Professional Engineers. I'm the applicant on this one. This is the second time you've seen me. I feel much better today. Thanks for bringing it back. I don't have a presentation. I'm here to answer any questions you guys may have. Happy to be here. Happy to let you know anything you need to know.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Don't go too far. Mr. Burrell?
Mayor and Council, my name is Michael Burrell, Interim Development Services Director for the City of Manor. This is the item that was brought last council meeting, but I made the error in putting Planning and Zoning Commission's recommendation as the agenda language as opposed to the actual request. So it had to be re-notified so that it could be brought back before the council again for a public hearing. I can answer any questions we may have. I don't know if Councilwoman Hill was able to relay the information that we discussed, but I can give a brief
Go
synopsis.
ahead, just in case everybody didn't see it.
I'm sorry?
I said you can go ahead and relay it.
There were questions about whether or not what the applicant is attempting to achieve on behalf of the owner can be completed with a C2 zoning designation, to which the answer is no. The general office is only allowed in C3. So if that were to be approved by the council, C3 zoning would have to be the zoning designation that is approved. There was also question about potentially zoning portions of the lot being, for example, the front half of the lot or whatever is necessary to meet the intent of the owner's desired use be zoned as C2. That way we can kind of guarantee more uses in line with our comprehensive plan, and then the back half of the lot be more aligned with what the owner was attempting to do. And other than that, it was just general questions about fire lanes, truck and loading requirements, which we did have a preliminary plan, and I'm certain Ms. Henderson could provide more context, but I did let Councilwoman Hill know that this is zoning is a little preliminary.
Okay. Council members, did you all have any questions?
What type of businesses are proposed to be there?
That's a great question. So my the owner on this one is a developer. He's going to build a shell building. There are no tenants yet secured for these buildings, so I can't tell you exactly what type of businesses. What I will tell you is that I've read through the ordinance that comes later and on the actual item. I think it's item 6, and he was okay limiting those uses to take those out, but he doesn't have a specific user yet.
Okay, thank you.
So since our last meeting, has there been no consideration taken to the C2 recommendation or the thoughts on that one?
So we did take that into account. There are some issues with the C2 zoning as it relates to your ordinance. The ordinance specifically says that where you have a highway, adjacent to that highway needs to be a C3. And so that's part of it. The C2 says that it should not be next to a highway. So that's a lot of the reason that the request was C3.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Other questions or comments? You're
Michael, I have
good
a
with
question.
the.
So do you have any, Michael, do you have any idea then with that thought of what was just mentioned about the distinguishing differences between the C2 and C3 referring to the highway? Did P&Z not take that into consideration, or was that?
I am actually unfamiliar with a section in our code that states that adjacent to a highway has to be C3, especially considering a lot of zoning cases before now, especially along 290 just going east of City Hall, are zoned C2, and there are many other C2 zoning designations. So if I may, could you point that section out for me, please? I'm sorry, I'm actually not familiar.
Happy to. So I sent this in an email to the mayor and your city manager, and it's actually section 14.02.013, where it says C2, which is medium commercial, is intended for malls and serving local regional needs. They're medium traffic roadways. That's where it says C3 is the heavy commercial district, and it's really for employment centers, and they're for right next to highways.
Other questions?
With our traffic already being heavy on 290, you will be doing the traffic mitigation thing to make sure that no road work needs to be done off of 290 for major trucks going through there.
So I think your question, let me see if I can restate it first and make sure I got your question. What I think you're asking is, are we going to take traffic into consideration and then look at like a traffic impact to see if a decel lane is required?
Yes.
So that we will look at that, yes. That doesn't usually, we'll do zoning and then that'll come during site development. That wasn't a comment that we got in the site development plans, but I think it's important to look at that and to make sure if we need it or not. I think this one's really on the cusp. Yeah, if we have to put a decel lane, we can.
Other questions? I do have a note from Valor. Still thinking about your question. I do have a note from Councilwoman Hill, and one of her questions was, I guess, to you or to the developer, in regards to whether or not they were going to prioritize kind of the recruitment of the retail to generate the sales tax. I don't know if y'all had that conversation or not.
I didn't quite hear your question. Can you tell me again?
In your recruitment for the Shell building,
Mhm.
would the developer be willing to prioritize the retail or sales tax generation versus office space?
So I feel like if that's the council's desire, he absolutely would. I don't think, given that what he's developed before, I don't think he'd have any issue with that.
Okay.
And also local job creation.
So yes, there will be some, absolutely. How many tenants and what their actual business is going to dictate that. So yes, there will be some. I just don't have a number for that.
Let's see, legal.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Two areas of guidance needed. One in regards to what's required for the vote for the P&Z recommendation. The requirement for passage with the for passage because of the P&Z recommendation, and two, based off of the information that came regarding the ordinances that was referenced a few minutes ago. How does that play out with the planning and zoning recommendation for C2?
Okay, I can answer the first question. The second question, I was trying to look up the
Okay.
code section, and if I could be given that code section again, I'll take a look at it and then respond. The first one is the motion made by P&Z was to go down to C2 is my understanding, but the request had been C3. And so if the council chooses not to go by the recommendation of the P&Z for C2 with the restrictions that they've asked for, which are in the bullets of the ordinance, then you would need a supermajority to go back to C3. And that's in accordance with your code. And I can provide you that section if you'd like. I just need to look it up very quickly. And then go ahead.
Zoning definitions of the categories, just to make sure I'm looking at the same section.
Yeah, I'm looking at this section.
C2, C3.
If there's a table for it.
14.02.
I wrote it down for you right there. It's 14.02.0.
13. Okay. Oops. Yeah, that's not 14.02.013 is not in the code, so I'm not sure what code she is referring to. I'm in the code right now.
What's the number?
14.02.013, And 14.02013 and what we're looking at in the current code is actually reserved. It's not a section right now. Where's 1.6? Okay. Dude, don't touch me. Just kidding. Was it B.016?
016.
016 provides the different district definitions. So what are we looking at?
Yes, it is.
Okay, so the correct section is 14.02.016.
Mm-hmm.
And what was the question that was being brought up?
The original statement, and please correct me if I'm incorrect, is that C2 is not intended to go next to highways, only C3 is. But I believe that may have been an older section of code, whereas this one.
Yeah, this one says for C2, medium commercial uses should be located along should be located along or the intersections of major roadways to accommodate the traffic generated. It gives that should be, that's a recommendation for that. And then it says C3, heavy commercial uses should have direct frontage along major highways. And so that's kind of the purpose of it, the guidelines that they're given in regards to each area. So the question is if the guidelines or the indication of purpose in that language, is it required or is it general descriptions or recommendations?
It is not required because of the word should instead of shall, or making it a requirement, but it is a recommendation that C3 go along major highways and C2 go along roadways, intersections of major roadways.
Okay. So everybody, all y'all understand it? Recommendation for the C3 is a recommendation from the code, but it's not required, but it is the recommendation from the code. Just so that everybody's on the same page.
There's discretion.
If I may, and please correct me.
Okay.
Oh, never mind. Pardon me.
Nothing, sir.
We're good? Okay.
Yes, we're good.
Other questions? We'll take other questions or comments or a motion to close the public hearing.
Michael, what is on the property that's next to it? That's to the west of it?
On the left of the screen?
On the left, yeah.
I believe that is the Bluebonnet project. They are a commercial construction equipment sales.
Okay.
Other questions or a motion to close the public hearing?
Mayor Council, I'd like to make a motion that we close the public hearing on item number 1.
We have a motion to close the public hearing by Councilwoman Wallace. Is there a second?
A second.
Second by Councilwoman Mesquite. Any questions to the motion? No questions to the motion. All in favor? Opposed? Motion passes. Let's see. All right. Okay, we're going to move right along to consent agenda. All the items on Consent agenda considered to be self-explanatory by council and will be enacted on motion. There will be no separate discussion of items unless requested by mayor or a council member, in which the item will be removed from the consent agenda and considered separately. Consideration, discussion, possible action on a license agreement for the Shuttle Glen Phase 3 development and Marriage Homes of Texas LLC. Number 3, consideration, discussion, and possible action on a 20-foot wide declaration of wastewater easement being excuse me, being a 0.036 acre tract of land situated in the Center Bacon Survey number 62, abstract number 63, and William Stanford Survey number 70, abstract number 743, Travis County, Texas. Number 4, consideration, discussion, possible action on a resolution authorizing participation in the Purchase Cooperative of America, PCA. I'll take a motion.
Mayor, council, I'd like to make a motion that we accept the consent agenda as read.
We have a motion on the floor by Councilwoman Wallace to accept the consent agenda. Is there a second?
I second.
Second by Councilwoman Amesquire. Any questions to the motion? Being none, all in favor? Motion passes. We'll move on to, before we move to the regular agenda, we need to take a quick recess. So recess. Yes, recess. We'll do that. We'll come back in about 10 minutes, and then we'll pick up with the regular agenda. Okay, time is 8:03 p.m. We'll pick back up from recess at our regular agenda item number 5, consideration, discussion, and possible action on the item on action on the City of Manor wastewater master plan. Yes, sir.
All right. Good evening, Manor, City Council, and Mayor. We're pleased to make this presentation tonight on the city's wastewater master plan. Thank you. With me today is Ethan Voiles, who led this project for us. He's been leading our group on models and studies for a number of years now. Wanted to just provide a little bit of context around this particular study. The prior master plan that was conducted for the city was adopted in 2008. And so a good amount of time had transpired between the adoption of that plan and this current one that's up for consideration. During that period, obviously, there was quite a bit of growth. And one of the major pieces that this study did was improve the types of information that was used, created a dynamic model that can be a living model that can continue to be updated and be used for evaluations of system improvements, for evaluations of new development, and provide a lot of guidance and so forth. And Ethan will speak more to that. But wanted to just express gratitude to the city for all the work that had been done over the past few years on metering and INI studies and GIS data sets that were leveraged in this piece to be able to provide a really robust planning and modeling tool for the city. So with that, I will turn it over to Ethan Voiles to introduce himself a little further and go into the presentation. Thanks.
Thank you very much. As Frank mentioned, I'm Ethan Voiles, and it's a pleasure for me to be here tonight. I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you all about the wastewater master plan, and want to express my gratitude also to the city staff that we worked with during the plan development. That was a crucial collaboration. It was a collaborative effort, so it really makes the plan even better that it was a collaborative effort. And let me switch. There we go. Get the hang of this. So agenda, we'll touch on a brief intro, a little bit of background, look at some key steps taken during the process. We'll look at projects that were identified during the master planning, some key takeaways, and then leave some time for questions. I'll try to move through this pretty quickly. I know not everyone shares my same level of excitement for sewers and wastewater, so I'll try to make this as brief as possible. So 2 purposes to keep in mind here. The master plan, the purpose of the master plan is really to guide the city towards a wastewater system that supports and serves the city's evolving needs and continued growth. And the purpose of this presentation is really to provide you, the city council, with key insights and outcomes from that wastewater master plan. As you're all aware, infrastructure is a key investment for the city of Manor, and we want to make sure that you feel confident that ratepayer, taxpayer dollars are being put towards the right projects at the right time. So it's our hope that you walk away feeling more confident in this plan, and it helps you in your consideration for adoption of the plan. So as Frank mentioned a little bit about on the background, there was a wastewater master plan completed in 2008 that looked ahead 10 years and in terms of CIPs. And it also had an ultimate scenario that it looked at. But since 2008, a lot has happened. A lot of rapid growth has occurred, as you all are aware, and a lot of development, a lot of new infrastructure. I'm sure you're aware, Manor is growing very rapidly, exponentially, roughly 13% annual growth, population growth since 2000. Compare that to the Austin metropolitan the MSA statistical area, and that roughly averages about 3%. So 13%, 3%. Manor is growing very rapidly, and with that new growth, the city needed a new plan, and new approaches needed to be taken as the city grows. Planning approaches need to grow along with it. So we needed a plan that was right-sized for Manor. Previous plans were a little more simplistic, and that's okay. It's more appropriate for smaller cities, but as Manor grows, we want to grow those planning processes along with it. The city's been proactively investing for a number of years into some tools that we used and leveraged for this planning. The chart there on the right just kind of gives some bubbles of different tools that we used: geospatial information systems, GIS, planning resources, flow monitoring data. Those were already being invested in outside of this project. We also developed a hydraulic model and manhole inventory for this project. So it's red bubbles there represent our project scope. So a couple key deliverables: manhole inventory on sewers 12-inch and greater, a hydraulic model in using the PC Swim software, which is the first time the city of Manor has had a model like this, and the master plan report, which was finalized last fall. Study area is just a little bit of set the scene. We looked at not only city limits, but also the entire extraterritorial jurisdiction of Manor, and Manor's ETJ spans 4 watersheds. And you've heard some comments earlier. There's a lot of complexity that adds when you have the city spanning 4 different watersheds, different ridge lines, different drainage basins, and that just creates complexity in planning. Your current system, by the numbers, you have over 63 miles of gravity sewer, over 7 miles of pressurized force main, roughly 1,400 manholes, probably more by now, 13 lift stations, and 2 treatment plants. So there's a lot of infrastructure to keep track of, and a lot more that will come with growth. And then the 2 treatment plants, the Wilbarger Creek wastewater treatment plant on the west side of town, which receives most of your wastewater, and the Cottonwood Creek wastewater treatment plant on the east side of town. So let's talk about some key steps that we took. We looked at future growth projections. We drew from the city's comprehensive plan. We drew from in progress and planned development maps that were kept up by Development Services. We looked at Community Impact Fee Advisory Committee information in terms of density, land use assumptions, density assumptions. So we were drawing from all these city resources in order to hopefully make a cohesive plan that aligns with other city plans. We used a 7% annual growth rate assumption, which was a conservative assumption that was decided upon with the city and in cooperation with the Water Master Plan, the Community Impact Fee Advisory Committee, and the rate study. We wanted to make sure our assumptions aligned. We looked at an existing conditions scenario, a 5-year and a 15-year planning scenario, and we had to figure out a way, how do we distribute that projected growth across the city in a logical way? Basically, where is the growth going to happen? We had to kind of make some best guesses based on our best available info. No one has a crystal ball, unfortunately, but we were drawing from all the best available info, as I mentioned earlier. So this became a key resource for the modeling, as was the flow monitoring data. This was something the city is already investing in. This was performed under a separate task order. But this data, it was key. It's flow data collected from the sewer system at key places, and we use that to calibrate the model against real world data. So we feel we can trust that model even more because it's calibrated, validated against real world data. We performed a manhole inventory of over 270 manholes on your city's sewer interceptors, so those 12-inch and larger sewers. And we were able to complete a vast majority of those, even the ones where we couldn't open the manhole lid. We still got useful information that went into the GIS system and into the hydraulic model. And finally, the hydraulic model itself is really those interceptors, those backbone sewers of your system. You know, they're the key highways for all that wastewater flow getting it to your wastewater treatment plants. And those were the sewers that we focused on for this plan. I don't have time to go into all this, but suffice it to say, the hydraulic modeling, we can use it for a number of different purposes. We can use it to assess risk in your system, so the risk of potential overflows from the sewers. No one wants overflows, and that's a risk that we want to manage and mitigate. We can also use the model to size potential improvements. So if we need bigger pipe or if we need a new project, then we can use the model to size those improvements. And then we can also use it to prioritize the projects based on risk. So let's talk a little bit about the projects. You don't have to look too closely. This is a long list, I know, but these were the projects that we identified during the master plan. This is one of the most actionable outcomes from the plan itself is the project look ahead. And these are projects that the capital committee is already leveraging and making use of in their capital planning programming. The top few lines, I'll go into these in a little more detail, but it's hard to see the colors, but majority of the projects land in that 15-year planning window, right? We looked at existing conditions, 5-year and 15-year. The 15-year planning window was the one where most of the projects crop up, and they're mostly growth driven. So if growth continues to occur in the expected way, then we'll need projects in this sort of scale. So existing conditions, kind of looking at present day projects, we identified several that were concerns in the existing sewers. And I won't go into detail on the projects. Happy to answer questions on specific projects during questions. But we used the model to identify these projects. There's also a number of ongoing projects that we kept track of. And one key component that we listed in the project list is rehabilitation and inflow and infiltration. So inflow and infiltration is that unwanted rainwater getting into your sewer system, and that's taking up pipe capacity. It's using up dollars down at the wastewater treatment plant. It's creating risk in your system, risk for overflows, and we don't want that. So we are recommending that the city continue its rehabilitation efforts in mitigating that I&I. This is something city is already investing in, and we want to definitely laud that, and we want to say this needs to be an ongoing effort to reduce I&I, because what that does is it helps clear up capacity for sewage. We want to use the pipes for sewage, not for rainwater. So looking at the 5-year scenario, projects identified, there were a couple projects, interceptor type projects, extensions to serve growth towards the east side of town along 290. These were identified in the community impact fee as well. And were also 2 treatment CIPs, or 2 treatment projects identified: expansion of the current Cottonwood wastewater treatment plant and expansion of the Wilbarger wastewater treatment plant. Those expansions will be very necessary in order to keep up with just general wastewater production. As more and more people move in, we need to have the capacity at our treatment plants to be able to treat that flow adequately and keep the environment clean. And then finally, the 15-year scenario. This map gets really, blurry because there's just a lot of projects on here. As I mentioned earlier, the red circles represent relief type projects of existing sewers. The purple lines represent new interceptors that could serve growth into new growth areas. And the green circles represent lift stations, the LS decommissioning, lift station decommissioning. We wanted to look for ways to eliminate lift stations that would reduce operations and maintenance costs across your system. This just makes good financial and environmental sense because you're using less energy to pump the water over a hill or over a ridge line, and you're sending it by gravity to the sewers that can take it by gravity. So we looked for those opportunities in the planning as well. And then finally, treatment-wise, we identified that just as the 2008 master plan had identified when it looked at an ultimate scenario, we identified too that there will be a need for increased treatment capacity on the east side of Manor as growth occurs out east. And that's going to be a crucial part of keeping up with the growth as Manor grows eastward. So a couple key takeaways. Cost-wise, there's I won't list the numbers there for time's sake, but those are bigger numbers, and just to put that in context, we're planning towards a roughly tripling in population of Manor over the next 15 years. So the investment is going to have to keep up with that in order to keep up with that growth. One thing to note, though, is all of this assumes a constant growth rate, the growth rate that we decided upon, and things change, things come up. So the dollars the majority of those dollars will need to be spent when the growth arrives, right? Or just in advance of the growth. So this is something where, this is flexible depending on how growth actually occurs. But we are using the best available assumptions for that growth. And then finally, just thinking about next steps, keeping it running, keeping the model running, keeping the tools available. For better or for worse, the master plan is more of a snapshot in time, the master plan document, but the tools that city's investing in are scalable. They can grow along with the city. If you maintain an asset inventory, you maintain your geospatial information systems, you maintain the model, you perform regular inflow and infiltration mitigation, you perform regular flow monitoring. These are things that will pay dividends for the city in terms of evaluating projects, the need for new projects to address new development, and keeping up with change as it occurs. It's a lot of text there, but to summarize, really it's about keeping the model updated, keeping track of growth, keeping track of the flows in the system, and then using that to make planning more efficient over time. So rapid growth requires new approaches. The city of Manor's rising to that challenge by employing new planning approaches. New tools bring new capabilities, and the prioritized strategic project list that comes out of this master plan can serve as a guide as the city grows. The city's already leveraging the plan recommendations in capital programming, and maintaining the tools that come out of this planning process is going to be really helpful in keeping things running. So I want to say thank you for your time, and I'll stop there for any questions.
Thank you. Thank you all for the presentation and for all the hard work getting the data in front of us. I'll yield to my council persons. Y'all have colleagues, y'all have questions?
I have two questions for Ethan and then one for Frank. Just curious, with the aging infrastructure that Manor has, did that affect the design for the hydraulics that you were doing?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. So I guess we take that into account. We think about capacity and we think about condition, right? So like a pipe could have plenty, it might be big enough, but it might be deteriorating, it might be really old. Or a pipe might be, it might not be big enough, but it's brand new, so we have to keep both of those things in mind as we plan for the wastewater infrastructure. And so the condition and the capacity are both top of mind, and that rehab and I&I mitigation piece is really crucial for addressing the aging infrastructure aspect. Does that answer your question?
And then my other question was in relationship to groundwater contamination. How will that work with that and protect us against that?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, with aging infrastructure, there oftentimes it's rainwater getting into the pipes or getting into the system. There's also opportunities for that sewage to exfiltrate or exit the system, or overflow, and those are things that we really don't want, and we don't want to have groundwater contamination. So all the more reason to continue that regular investment in rehabilitating the sewers and keeping them up to date.
And then Frank, my question for you is, when the regional one comes online, are there going to be some lift stations that are going to be decommissioned? And if they are, what's that going to look like, please?
So there were, on that map, if you recall, there were several lift stations along the Cottonwood Creek, and the goal is when the regional facility is constructed, there will be sufficient treatment capacity to eliminate a number of those lift stations and have them flow by gravity to the regional facility, which will take some of the burden off of the Wilbarger plant. And that's important because of the growth that's occurring in the Wilbarger Basin. So you'll be able to maximize the treatment capacity in the Wilbarger Basin by only serving within the Wilbarger Basin.
Thank you both.
Other questions?
Okay, my question is, okay, you guys have heard the people that have come today. They're against that regional plant being where it's at. One, is there a different place for it to go where the flow goes the same way that you want it to go? And two, do you take in consideration putting the plant there and what it will do to the flow of rainwater and everything else going down? And how is it going to not affect all three creeks that will be right there?
Sure. So the city decided in 2006 to purchase that site with the express purpose of it being for the regional wastewater treatment plant. And everybody was cognizant at that time of the fact that there is a lot of floodplain around there, which is really pretty much true of almost all wastewater treatment plants. They're all adjacent to a floodplain typically, because that's where the watershed goes and drains to. So you don't have wastewater treatment plants at the top of the hill. That just doesn't make sense from a practical purpose. And so the location is optimal because it's at a confluence of a number of different creeks, and there's about a 25 square mile drainage basin. Those basins, all of those go up to the Travis County line, where they then go to the north on the other side of the Travis County line. So there's a big potential to be able to serve not just City of Manor, but potentially even Pflugerville, Elgin, so forth and so on. As far as the stormwater and conveyance of that stormwater, so any work that's done on the site to be able to have the plant outside of the floodplain will be offset. So there won't be any net change in cut and fill as far as the site and the drainage basin. But we'll go in and do a full hydraulic analysis of everything as part of the design and make sure that there won't be any negative impacts downstream. The city, as far as their policies with regard to detention, the city has adopted by reference the City of Austin Drainage Criteria Manual many years ago, which requires that detention be provided for the 2, 10, 25, and 100-year storm event unless early release is beneficial.
Okay. Also, we were given information that shows that Pflugerville and Elgin have lines that were connected to go towards the regional plant, or they come down those creeks.
So they don't have any connections to the regional plant at this point. And we have had conversations maybe in more depth with Elgin because the boundary and the development along that area is more proximal. And so that makes sense. But the city wants to work with the neighbors and provide that. One of the advantages is the city will be able to relieve the Cottonwood wastewater treatment plant with the East Travis Regional.
Okay, I just want to have that for the record.
Yeah.
So then people can understand why some of the decisions are being made.
Absolutely.
Other questions? I wrote down a few. Councilman Wallace took a few of mine, so I'll go with the rest of them. You did mention that the site was optimal. If there was a consideration, what would the alternative site have to be at? Because I do have an understanding that we spent a lot of money kind of preparing to go towards that 2006, site location. But if there was an alternate site, where would it have to be based off of the millions we've already invested?
So there isn't another site that will work as well with regard to being at the confluence of the basins, because this is directly there. All the adjacent tracks are conservation or Travis County that are sizable enough to be able to put a facility like that on it. So the alternatives are to go upstream or further downstream. To go upstream, you would have to then maybe collect and have a lift station and then pump back up the hill to another wastewater treatment plant site, or extend gravity line further down to the southeast. City of Manor could potentially locate a plant further south, but that would be outside of the city's ETJ, most likely. One of the great advantages, and we've cited quite a few plants over the years, of having floodplain adjacent to a wastewater treatment plant site, is it provides a natural buffer, if you will. So those concerns about noise and odors and so forth can be mitigated through those natural buffers, and well in excess of the minimum regulatory requirements. And so we've intentionally sited them at areas that are surrounded, and this site is surrounded pretty much about at 180-degree bandwidth to the west, the north, and the east, with the creeks and the attendant floodplains.
Thank you. What precautions? I know we've approved a lot of different things with Matt and his team in regards to checking pipes and stuff like that. So in regards to the concern of spills, what processes do we have in place already or will be underway for checking pipes to have a greater certainty of prevention of spills.
So, and one of the things that's already been mentioned a little bit is, you know, the ability to remove lift stations and have it flow by gravity definitely improves system reliability. You've just got less equipment with a potential to malfunction, the fewer lift stations you have. And so if we can take 3, 4, or 5 of them offline, that reduces operational costs. It reduces the risk of, you know, spills from the lift station. It reduces staff time and the labor to maintain them. Makes your director of public works very happy because he doesn't have to monitor all those pieces. But the lift stations themselves all come with multiple redundant systems to ensure that the risk of a spill is minimized. So there are extra pumps at all lift stations. There's backup power. There is remote monitoring systems. There are bypasses. The city has portable generator facilities as well to provide additional backup, and portable pump connection units. So there's multiple ways that you know, these all lift stations are designed to be able to provide those redundancies to prevent spills.
So I've been listening to our residents and the conservation of land and the parks, and so my question is: have we explored any type of or done the research to look at how to build something that is more environmental friendly and kind of breaks the more of the traditional or the design that folks fear, like
right. So there are definitely things that we will include in the designs. You know, as far as noise, there's not a lot of loud equipment at most wastewater treatment plants, with the exception of the blowers that provide the compressed air for aerated wastewater treatment plants. But what we do with those is have sound attenuation enclosures that the blowers are within those insulated sound attenuating enclosures, and then we actually put those within a shelter. So you've got a box and then a box outside of it as well too, and so really mitigate those. And we're conscious of how those are located relative to the adjacent properties, and so, you know, put them in locations where, you know, they're in between buildings and they're buffers and berms, and there's lots of ways to mitigate noise quite effectively. As far as odors, you know, we have designed quite a few systems that include special odor controls, and even design them. We can monitor the influent to the plant, and we're just completing a plant right now where we monitored an existing plant, and when we did an expansion, we designed custom media to filter that air that comes out of the plant at that location to minimize those. So these are things that are in excess of, you know, what regulatory requirements are, but provide for minimizing those potential nuisances and to be good neighbors.
Yeah, and I think that's those items you're mentioning are definitely awesome features. I'm meaning more so about an intentional or innovative design that doesn't deter away from the natural spaces. Something that doesn't if it's there, it does not look like what you know, a wastewater treatment plant. That it's the design is maximized, and the use of the outputs are designed specifically for the purpose of the environment and so forth. So I'm wondering how in this situation, right, where we've made some decisions in 2006 and then spent almost 20 years building infrastructure around that, 2006 decision. That's very costly. And then the request in regards to, hey, is there a different way to do it? I wonder if there is a way to innovate. It seems like there's an opportunity to explore something that's more innovative in versus a traditional design.
Well, there are always new technologies that are coming forward, and of course, new regulatory requirements. I mean, probably everybody here has heard about the forever chemicals, PFAS, and so forth. And so, we're constantly improving treatment methodologies. There are different types of treatment works that are out there. The conventional plant is probably one of the most common ones that's available, and provides for a lot of operational tolerance, if you will. The plant is essentially a huge biomass. It's all the microorganisms and bacteria that metabolize the waste stream, which is the food for that. And so a conventional plant has some real advantages over some of the other newer technologies like membrane facilities. Membrane facilities typically have higher concentrations of solids, but in smaller amounts. And if you have something go wrong with that system, you don't have much tolerance. But the conventional plant is actually a little bit larger. It has a slightly larger footprint, but because of the larger biomass, you've got the ability to be able to absorb shock loads. If it starts to have an issue, you've got some time to turn the ship before you have a problem. And so those methods are really well proven, but there are things that we're constantly doing to improve the aspects of it. Like I said, going in and designing custom odor control systems that are designed specifically to the wastewater treatment plant and that waste stream that it's treating right there. There are ways to do intensification to optimize the treatment works and so forth. And so we are planning on doing, we're making provisions for these new treatments that are going to be required down the road as far as PFAS, making sure that there are provisions for that. There are no regulations at this point, so there's nothing to be designed, but there are things we can do to make sure that there are sufficient hydraulics to be able to add that extra unit in there down the road so that there's the ability to expand to meet future regulatory requirements. We'll work with the commission on the treatment levels, but right now the proposed effluent parameter set for the plant is the highest or the most restrictive standard effluent parameter set that the commission issues permits for.
Okay. A few more questions.
Sure.
So in the handout we were provided of the pending applications and permits, several of which are Pflugerville, and then the ones that say Austin or Travis County. And so one of which is from here, I guess would be southeast from here, the potential application to move from 49,000 gallons a day to 650,000 gallons per day on the same creek. Is when you're talking about going further south, is that what the county is doing with theirs?
So that particular facility is quite small compared to even just the first phase proposed facility for this. Mm-hmm. It's contemplated in the plan that the first phase of the plant would be a 1.5 million gallon per day, so not quite 3 times that plant size, with a potential to create a second 1.5 MGD treatment train next to it, so you could have up to 3 MGD available initially.
The county? No, I'm talking about the county one.
Right. So their scope and scale for that plant is much, much smaller than what we're talking about for this regional facility.
Okay.
Yeah.
But it's
And
it's
we-
on the same creek, so I'm asking more about the direction. When I asked you about the two options, and you said I already know that going north means double or triple the cost to do that. So, but you talked about a pipe that goes longer, and so I'm wondering is where in this location where they're already about to expand on the same creek, is that
So we contacted all the facilities that were permitted within a 3-mile radius of the plant, and I've slept since then. But by my recollection, there were 3 facilities. I don't recall if we received word back from any of them as far as a willingness or a desire to serve. I think all of the responses were no. One was we weren't even going to build that facility. The other one was a small commercial site, and then the third said we don't have any capacity. So
no, not for us to jump into. I'm asking where do you know if this location for Briar Creek and Briar Creek Loop is south of where we could when I asked you
So
about,
is that the Briar Creek wastewater treatment plant?
Yes. Is that south of where
that is northwest of this plant site. So it's Briar Creek is northwest of this site.
Okay. So this is already in front of this.
It's
this is
yeah,
going to
that's
build.
a privately owned facility. AquaSource, I think, still owns that facility.
Aqua Texas, yeah.
And Aqua Texas now, and that facility is very small, and they only planned for it to serve that Briar Creek community, and so the permit was limited to that and that alone. And I know because I used to work for AquaSource back in the 90s and actually helped them a little bit with that plant at that time. So pretty familiar with that particular facility. But it's a small package plant. It's smaller than the Cottonwood, and the site isn't anywhere near sufficient to be able to support the kind of flows that we'd be talking about at the East Regional.
The plant on Greg, is it Greg Lane?
The Pflugerville plant?
Yeah, Greg Lane. Is that the same where they're using gravity lines to dump there and then
So there's a history there. So when Pflugerville was applying for the permit for that plant, Maynard discussed that with them, and Pflugerville had indicated that there may be a willingness to serve, and so Maynard didn't protest that permit at that time. We had originally in the prior CIP to the 2021-22 CIP contemplated putting in a lift station at the north end of Manor, just not too far south of Greg Lane, to catch those subdivisions that are on the north side of Shadow Glen and just pump those up into the Pflugerville plant. When we approached Pflugerville plant, when we were looking at that particular approach, they didn't indicate a willingness to provide service at a reasonable cost, I guess you could say. And so that's when the development agreements were worked out with those properties there along 973, and they put in the lift station that then now conveys the flows down to the Wilbarger plant. So we tried to work out something with them, really wasn't cost effective, and so the switch was made. And so the 2022 CIF shows that lift station, which is already been started. So that area is being served already. It's not developed, but the lift station's in.
Do we know their policy? I know we have a more stringent requirement on our build and our disposal. Do we know what theirs is in comparison?
With regard to?
Like we adopted Austin's regulations. Do we know what they have?
As far as drainage, or I don't know, but we know somebody who used to work over there.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I do have a little bit of knowledge of what's going on. They have adopted a lot of City of Austin specs, but they did actually build on top of that. So they do have a lot of their own requirements. I do know as much as what they're going to do with that new plant is right off the bat, as soon as it gets online, they're going to convert half that flow, what they have already in the city, to that plant. So they're probably looking at probably around 5 to 6 MGD when they kick it off. They actually have a plan set where the kind of the contour of the city and everything, and where there's a manhole and certain lift stations, well, as soon as it comes online, they're going to automatically divert that flow all the way to that new plant. And that plant is north, way north of where we're proposing. So a lot of those flows are going to come from that plant. I think what I saw is at least 15 MGD is what they have on there.
Yeah.
But I think they can expand to 24 MGD. So a lot of those flows that's going to go through that basin is going to be from that Pflugerville wastewater plant.
Okay. That's what I was, I appreciate the data that we received, but that's what I was seeing was, I know we had been trying to have conversations and be more collaborative, and merge, in area. And
one thing, I know I was there, but I never heard of anything. So that must have been somebody else's advice of saying, no, don't let Maynard go in there. So I never even knew it was there. So I would have said, sure, come on board.
Yeah.
What we can say is that there is, with the solutions that are worked out in the Wilbarger Basin for Manor and Pflugerville, that course is pretty well set at this point. The odds of it being economically appropriate to relieve everything down to the East Travis Regional are pretty minimal. But in Cottonwood, Willow, and even maybe some in Elm Creek potentially in the future, there are still potentials for partnership. And so we want to, be open to those conversations and see where there are opportunities to partner with the neighboring communities and see if there are economies of scale that can be achieved and so forth and so on.
okay. I think that's my last question.
Mayor, I'd like to say I think you asked the question that you asked it better than I did. Because that was kind of the same way I was trying to go, is that Pflugerville has a portion of this as well. But what I want to know is what is going to be taken into consideration with the wildlife that is in that area. Because, we don't want nobody going fishing further down and getting a two-headed fish because something didn't go right. You know what I'm saying?
Right. Well, hopefully we're not processing any nuclear waste. But so like I said, the proposed effluent parameter set, which is basically the limits on different constituents in the treated effluent, is the most restrictive one that the commission issues as far as a standard effluent parameter set. And so we'll have a whole series of different treatment trains in there. One of the things that we're looking at for this facility is going with UV disinfection. In lieu of using chemical disinfection, there's less risks with regard to issues around the chemicals, because for a plant that large, you have to chlorinate to disinfect and then dechlorinate before you discharge. And so the UV systems are very effective at making sure that the final treated effluent that's been filtered is fully disinfected before it gets discharged into the stream.
Also, what about in the initial building of the plant itself? All of that comes with a lot of material coming in, the trucks and all of that stuff, disturbing that habitat right there in that area. And that's, I guess, what part of the concern is with the people in the community, is even building the plant itself may cause a disturbance to the natural environment.
Yes, and so there with all construction there will always be those disturbances. We do everything we can to minimize those. So putting in temporary sedimentation ponds, and then collecting that on site to make sure there's no migration of sediments off site or into the creek and that sort of thing. Wherever the plant gets built, there will be those impacts there or somewhere else. We're fortunate in that, this isn't in an area where we've got, something akin to like on the west side of Austin, where you've got the golden cheek warbler and habitat for endangered species and so forth and so on. But we won't have to disturb much of the vegetative area. That site is historically it's been used for growing, I think it's coastal, but some sort of hay production. And so it's not like there's going to need to be a lot of going in and clearing on the site to make it usable. There will need to be lines, run the trunk mains to the plant. But as far as the site itself, there will be minimal clearing needed for that.
Mayor, Council, what I'd like to add too is when we talked about the project, we also talked about gray water. And most cities that have a regional plant or some plant that's of significance, they use that water to sometimes serve as a fire system if it's pressurized. And so we talked about, we know if 290 ever get worked on, that's going to be a lot of water needed to do work for 290 and all that. So we talked about, instead of getting water from the fire hydrant that's domestic water, we talked about having a design where you have gray water for that use, and that can be a resellable option for us. And if we had multiple golf courses or grass farms, that could be another use that water could be used for that. So we was trying to make sure they're thinking about another use rather than treat it and then release it. Because like with the Wilbarger now, we currently we give water to the golf course so they don't have to use treated water for their fairways and some of their rough areas. So we want to make sure as we look at the design and take everything into consideration, how are you being environmentally friendly with that source? Because not a lot of communities can take advantage of that amount of gallons per day. What's another use? And if there's another use, hopefully with the design and the growth, we'll be able to take advantage of that and maybe generate another revenue stream for the city to be able to do some things that we hadn't planned for. Even back in 2006, it wasn't a big topic, but here in 2025, it's another topic for us to keep in mind for us being able to have an alternate use for that, the water that's treated.
And over the past few years, Boehner's really done well in terms of providing reclaimed water. So the Wilbarger plant, there's a 210 reuse authorization for that facility, that the city supplies water to the golf course and is in the process right now of putting in a filling station to be able to supply construction water to trucks for, mitigating dust and helping with construction water and so forth. Mm-hmm. The Cottonwood wastewater treatment plant also has a 210 reuse authorization and has a provision to be able to send that to a pond that's been classified suitable for storing treated effluent. Originally it was for the CASA property, but there may be uses for that treated effluent. So the regional facility will contemplate as well too, and a 210 authorization should be obtained for that as well too, because it is a valuable, beneficial reuse of that resource, that discharged effluent.
Mm-hmm. Any other questions or comments, council members?
As we work, on the master plan and all that, whenever the time comes, will we have more opportunity for community input and info sessions and stuff like that? Is that a possibility?
Absolutely. We've been working with the Capital Committee for a number of months now on just up to this point, really just assembling all of the various projects that are being generated out of the various efforts that have been ongoing. So the comprehensive plan had certain recommendations, and so this is everything. It's municipal facilities, library, city hall, parks, transportation, drainage, water, wastewater. All of these pieces are being incorporated into a capital plan program. And we're just at the point now of this week, we're working on the initial prioritization pieces for that. This month, those priorities are going to be refined to provide a draft list, if you will, for consideration in April that will go in conjunction with the city's budgeting process and so forth to lay out the next 5 years worth of capital projects. And so I'm sure there'll be opportunities in that process with everything else that goes on with all of the budget pieces and so forth to get public involvement, public input and yeah, provide for that opportunity. Mhm.
Other questions? I'll take other questions, comments, or a motion on the floor. I'll take other questions, comments, or a motion on the floor.
Mayor Council, I'd like to make a motion that the City Council adopt the City of Manor wastewater master plan.
Well, motion on the floor by Councilmember Rayner. Is there a second?
A second.
Second by Councilwoman Messmer. Any questions to the motion? Any other questions to the motion? All right, being none, all in favor? Opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right, moving on to item number 6. First reading, consideration, discussion on possible action of an ordinance rezoning for one lot on 4.879 acres more or less and being located at 16023 East US 290 Manor, Texas from GO General Office to C-3 Heavy Commercial. Yes, sir.
Mayor Council, this is the item that was discussed in the public hearing. I'm available for any questions. We can talk about zoning implications, the Planning and Zoning Commission recommendation if we want to rehash that, or any other questions that may come to mind.
Council members, do you have any additional questions? Yes, ma'am.
Mayor, council members, Veronica Rivera, Assistant City Attorney. Just for clarification, the draft ordinance that you have in your backup is based on feedback that we received the last time from y'all.
Second.
So it's based on feedback that we received from y'all the last time, which it does state it's C3 with some exceptions.
Thank you for that reminder.
And it's not going along with what P&Z
Yes.
voted on.
So that's just a reminder for what we said and what we did. I don't know, 2 meetings ago, was whenever we did it, and we had to bring it back because the language that was on that particular night wouldn't allow for the recommendations and the restrictions that you that council that we wanted to do. So we had to bring it back with the appropriate language, and so as was what was just stated, what we left that day with was C3 with restrictions. Does anyone need further clarification or have questions about that? If not, we'll entertain a question, comment, or a motion. I'll entertain a question, comment, or motion.
Okay, so the in our backup right here, these are the listed uses that we're not going to permit, not just
Correct.
the ones that are up here in
The page that is at the end of it says 178.
yes.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Alrighty then. Mayor Council, I'd like to make a motion that we approve the first reading of an ordinance rezoning for one lot on 4.879 acres more or less and being located at 16023 East US Highway 290, Maynard, Texas, from GO General Office to C3 heavy commercial with restrictions. There's no and
With restrictions. That's
with
good.
restrictions.
We have a motion on the floor by Councilwoman Wallace. Is there a second?
I second.
Second by Councilmember Moreno. Any questions to the motion? No questions to the motion. All in favor? Opposed? Motion is 5 to 1. Good? All right. Moving on to item number 7. Second and final reading, consideration, discussion, possible action on an ordinance rezoning one lot on 0.9596 acres more or less and being located at 13100 Greenberry Drive, Maynard, Texas, from SF2 single family standard to C-1 light commercial. This is one that I want to go in and have legal counsel conversation with. So City Council will now convene to executive session pursuant to the provision of Chapter 551.071 consultation with attorney. All right. Time is 10:19 p.m. City Council will now convene to open session pursuant to the provisions of Chapter 551. Texas Government Code take action, if any, on items discussed in closed executive session. There is no action to take. This meeting is adjourned at 10:19 p.m.